tonight we're going to talk about the animals under the light of Spiritism. And this talk is based on some Spiritist books, and I listed all of them in the end of the presentation. But here I brought some, like we have 4 of them. Some are in Portuguese, and they are really interesting with many cases, many stories, thoughts about the spiritual life, what happens there, what they see while they are discarnated, like some of the spirits. It's really interesting. If you have any questions at the end of the talk, you can ask questions. Okay? So let's start. So there are many questions. We have many questions. Do animals have a soul? Do they reincarnate? Can we reincarnate as animals? What's the nature of the animal's spirit? What's the nature of our spirit? Why do they exist on Earth? Do they exist to serve us or just to serve us? Why do they suffer? We don't like to see animals suffering, right? We don't like to see anyone suffering. And what's our responsibility concerning the animals? So many questions. We're going to try to answer some of them. But there's still much we don't know, like many details, how things happen in the spiritual world. But we're studying and we're learning. So let's go. Before we talk about the animals, we need to go back a little bit, talk about some concepts. So in Spiritism, we learn about the universal Trinity, which is God, which is the first cause, the creator of the universe. And God created the spirit and matter, and He uses it, or it uses it, to create everything we see in the universe. So God first, and then spirit and matter. Everything that exists on the universe came from those two. So God's spirit and matter are the principle of everything that exists. And when we talk about spirit, actually the origin of the spirit is this, what we call intelligent principle. They also call it spiritual principle. The other side. And then here, the matter is actually the material principle. That's so if we think of an example, we humans, we have our spirit, which we can say it's an individualization of the intelligent principle. And we have our body. Our body is the matter. So the body is the individualization of the material principle. So we're going to learn a little bit more. Let's go here. So, and we're going to talk about the evolution of both, the spirit and the matter. So first, the evolution of matter. So this is science. So we learn about the evolution, the theories, Big Bang, how the planet started, or how the universe, when it was created, how we have many theories. We don't know exactly all the details, but we have some ideas, right? So that's explained by science. And science only explains the material world, like the chemical reactions, the biology of animals, the behavior, but it doesn't explain the spirit. So this is what we study here, the spirit side of things, right? So the spirit also evolves like matter, and it makes sense because God created everything. We couldn't just have matter evolve, the spirit evolves in conjunction with matter. So in Spiritism, we learn about human evolution. Everything started with God, and they say that the angelic spirits, they sow the seeds of life on Earth. So here we're talking about human evolution on Earth. We know there are other planets that went through evolution as well, but we're going to focus on Earth. It's a big enough of a subject, I think. Right? So God created the spiritual principle, and like we said, angelic spirits, so that on Earth. And then the rest, we just need to know that for each different step in the evolution, there's something behind. There's an intelligence behind it, which is the intelligence or intelligent principle. So it's a long process. It takes billions of years for this process to go through. Like, for example, on Earth, it took 4 billion years. So Earth was created 4 billion years ago. So this diagram, so we're showing the intelligent principle in action. So on all the different steps. And here we're talking about both this material evolution and spiritual evolution. So there is the seeding process, and while this happens and the principle goes through every step, there's also the matter transformation. It happens at the same time. And here we are showing that everything starts at the spiritual principle. They also call this monad. And the end, or the goal, is the perfect spirit. So this spiritual principle will one day become perfect spirit. So let's see how. Continue on the different steps of the evolution. We have the bacteria, we have the protozoans, fungi, algae, then you have plants. And remember, behind all of this, there was an intelligent principle that made all this material transformation happen. Nothing happens by chance, according to Spiritism. Science still might have some other theories, but we know there is an intelligent reason behind everything, which is God. And so we keep going here, plants, then we have animals, superior animals, mammals, primates, until we reach the humankind. So humankind emerged on Earth, and that was like 2 million years ago, the first species. So André Luiz, in this book, In a Higher World, he describes a little bit what that process is. So from amoeba in the tepid water of the seas until reaching mankind, we have battled, learned, and selected invariably. So we went through this process, or the principle went through this process. So to acquire muscles and movements, abilities, and reasoning, we have tried life, and life has tried us for thousands of years. So here he's talking about the process, the evolution, the reincarnation. So continue talking about that. The humanization process, they also call this humanization process. And there is a question in the Spiritist book, so whenever you see this SB and then a number means the Spiritist book, they have a question. Do you mean that the soul was once, our soul, was once the intelligent principle of less advanced species? They say yes, the spirits say yes. So it is in these less evolved beings that the intelligent principle is developed, gradually individualized and made ready to live. But I have a note there that some people, we might be confused. So the human spirit, us, we cannot say that we were a rock or we were a plant or an animal. So we can only call human spirit after this principle went through this process, went through this humanization process. Then we can say, okay, now it's us. Now you have conscience of, we have conscience of ourselves. I know my name is Fernanda, I'm incarnated here. So me, myself, this human spirit came from the spiritual principle, but it wasn't really. So there is an example here, maybe to try to explain this difference that I know Penny uses a lot, the cookie dough example. So let's see if I can explain myself here. So imagine cookie dough for people who cook. I don't, but I can imagine. So you have cookie dough. You can consider that the whole thing as the spiritual principle. It's something. Then you have to mix all the ingredients. You don't need, you have to work the dough. So doing this is one of the processes. Okay, so we're processing the dough. Once you start to separate the dough, now it's starting to individualize the principle in pieces, right? But it's still these pieces raw. You haven't cooked anything. So maybe we can say at this stage, It's like the animals. It's the principle that was individualized somehow, and we can say those might be the animals in this comparison. But then after the raw dough, you put in the oven, so you bake the dough. But it's already individualized, so you bake, and which means it's another process. It's more transformation. Maybe you can compare it to suffering, to evolve. It's a process. So now you have the baked cookie. So now you can say, oh, this is the human spirit. After it went through all this transformation, maybe some suffering, evolution, this is the human spirit. Is that okay? We don't have to understand all the details, but just like as a broader idea, as high level. So we have an idea what is this spiritual principle. So but what science says, so what we know like in biology and anthropology. So share no doubts about this issue. So human beings have evolved, so looking at the material side, the body, the matter, human beings have evolved from an animal species called Australopithecus, and whose fossils have been found in South Africa. So here's just showing the first. This was actually like still a monkey species, and then it evolved until Homo habilis. This is the first human species. So science shows us that the body, that's how the body evolved genetically. And still nowadays, if we compare the chimpanzee's DNA with ours, you see it's almost identical. So science shows us that evolution of the matter. But what does the spirit say? So Emmanuel, that's okay. Emmanuel, there are many messages. So Emmanuel is the mentor, or it was the mentor of Chico Xavier. And there are many messages from him in different books. In different books, different messages, but there are many about animals. So in this one, it says, I feel uneasy to declare that all of us already thought on their bashful evolutionary circle. It's talking about animals. They are our closest relatives. So just comparing to what science says and what Emmanuel or the spirits are saying. They are our closest relatives, although the stubbornness of many who insist in denying it. Sometimes we don't want to think we're relatives to the animals, right? Some people don't, at least. So you will receive as a sacred obligation the duty to support animals in the gradual scale of their various stages in the planet. So he's saying we have a duty because we live together, like we live together with other people, and we have relationships. We also live together with animals. They are part of the universe. They are part of the balance of Earth also. So we extend to them your conception of solidarity in your heart to deeply understand evolution's great secrets, understanding the world, the wonderful and sweet mysteries of life. So the more we know about animals, the more we'll know about the universe, the more we will understand life and the mysteries of life. So another question, Spiritist book 612. Can a spirit that has animated a human body be incarnated in an animal? So the spirit says no. So there is a law of progress. We never go back. So here, this kind of incarnation would be retrograde movements. And a spirit never goes backwards in its development. And they compare, like the river doesn't flow back to its source. So, but there are some other philosophies that think or say that we go back, we can come back as spirits. But in Spiritism, we don't believe that. Since we learn about the law of progress, it doesn't make sense for us to go back. Because this is like the scale of evolution. Another question. Spiritist book 597. Since animals have an intelligence that gives them a degree of free action, do they have a principle independent of matter? They're asking if they have a soul. So yes, and we saw this already. And it survives the body. So they reincarnate. We're going to talk more about reincarnation later. So if they have a spirit, if they have a soul, we have a soul, what's the difference? How does it work? What's different there? So they say that the essence is the same. So we all became from the principle. The spirit is our spiritual principle. We came from the same place and we have evolved. We are evolved. But the main difference is basically the level of evolution. So we are in different levels of the scale of the evolution. Which doesn't mean they are less than us. It's just they are in a process, we are also. And the more we know, the more we're responsible for. So the more intelligent we are, we're more responsible for what we do. So the human soul, after that, it preserves its individuality and self-awareness. The animal soul also preserves its individuality, like we talked about in cookie, but its intelligence is in a dormant state. So they do have intelligence, and there are many articles, many studies that show like pigs have intelligence, horses, and in some of these books there are many stories about like horses that can do basic math, like 2 + 3 and multiplication, and even like square roots, because they learn, they were taught, and they also understand. Like the guy who was teaching one of them like German, he understood German, like basic sentences, and the other one French. It's very impressive if you start, study and see what they found out. Also, chimpanzees, they were able to teach them to communicate through sign language with humans, and then also with other chimpanzees. So after they learn how to communicate with humans, they start to communicate with each other. So animals are more intelligent than we have an idea, I think. And this is just like the studies. There are so many other situations that maybe we don't even know about. Those are, and there was one dog. There was this lady. She was teaching her daughter math, but the daughter didn't like math. She didn't want to, answer the question. And I think in every session the dog was there watching. And then in one session, she was asking how much is 2 × 2. And the girl, she didn't want to respond, she wasn't interested, and she asked like many times, and then the dog started to stare at the woman, and she noticed something weird, and then he approached her, and he tapped on her arm 4 times. He knew the answer, right? But maybe he didn't know how to communicate, but that's how he showed 4 times, and then after that, they did a lot of experiments with that dog, and he was able to learn other things. So I was impressed. So the more we evolve, the more free will we have. So we have more choices. We develop knowledge. If we think about human beings, we develop reason, self-awareness, responsibility, and the less instinct we have. Also, less ignorance, meaning we're not aware, not being aware, not knowing things. And the less violence and less matter density, we become more lighter. And also there is less material desire. So the more we evolve, we're like closer to angels instead of, primitive animals. So that's the main difference between animals and human spirit. So in this book, so Fernanda, she's a professor in USP in São Paulo. She talks about many things And one of the things she was asking is, why do animals exist? And she did a lot of research, and one thing she mentions is, let's step back and think about Earth when Earth was created. So that was like 4 billion years ago. If we think of the scale, here you see this red asterisk. This is where the first pluricellular animals emerged. So they emerged like 1.7 billion years ago. So the first animals and plants started here. Human species started here. So 2 million years ago. So for a long time, really, really, really long time, there were a lot of animals and plants on Earth. Why were they here? To serve us? It's hard to say, right? Why all these years and we were not here? So she makes this point, and she says that man arrived, so to speak, at the last hour, at the last few minutes on Earth's creation. Animals have been on Earth for a long time before man. So in her mind, and that was the book's name, she says, so it's necessary to make a great effort to understand why such a quote exists, since it's unfair and untrue. And she's a scientist, so from her point of view, this is not true, that they exist to serve us. And she said, animals have existed and still exist for intrinsic related reasons. Matter and intelligent principles sharing evolution. The truth is, we ourselves have already existed in them somehow. In the other book, All Animals Are Our Brothers and Sisters. So in this book, they talk about spiritual colonies. So in the spiritual world, there is a group of people who are responsible for animals. So let's say if an animal dies, like for human beings, if someone dies, there is a team, there is spiritual mentors that are there for us. They help us, they take us to some places so we can rest. When we wake up, they talk with us, they take care of us basically. So the same thing happens for animals. There are spiritual colonies that are responsible for rescuing animals. So in this book, they describe, or they show on the spiritual world, they have classes. So like on Earth, people go there, and there is an instructor, there's students, and I thought it was interesting that it's not just when you die, you learn more things in the spiritual world. Actually, even when we are here, when we sleep, sometimes we are going somewhere and we are learning things. But we don't remember when we get back because matter is too dense, too heavy. So when we get here, we forget. So during this class, Derek was the name of the instructor. And some spirits there were incarnated, but they were sleeping. So they were there, taking classes. And then some were discarnated. So there was like a group of people. So I thought it was interesting. And he says, don't use the word owner, because we're used to say, the dog's owner, the cat's owner, because that's how we think. We're the owner, right? We're better. We possess people and things and animals. So he recommends, because this is like a more advanced class. In the other book, there was like a more basic class, and they use the word owner, but this is more evolved. So the more evolved you are, even the words matter. The words we use, how we refer to people and things matter. So he says, he recommends, don't use the word owner, because this word implies possession. No one owns any animal. We are their tutors. in their spiritual development and not their possessions. So we teach, but we also learn a lot from them. Like we learn from each other, and that's the reason why we incarnate. We are social beings. That's how we evolve. If you go to a mountain where there's nobody, what are you going to learn? You can maybe, learn to be more. You can learn to live with yourself, which maybe is something hard for some people. But if you never relate to anyone, how are we going to evolve? That's in the relationships. When we are not, when we don't like someone, when we have that brother that, we're always fighting, that's when we learn. That's when we're trying to be our best version. So it's the same thing with animals. We learn from them and they learn from us. This should be considered like a relationship. And then they say also animals are our journey's companions. So we should consider more like companions and not like the owner. Deserving respect and above all, love. So some more real stories. This one is with Divaldo Franco. He's a famous medium in Brazil. So it's a story about him with the German Shepherd. He was invited to speak in Campo Grande one time, and when he arrived there, Mrs. Edviges, she was his hostess, so he was staying at her house. So when he arrived at her house, he was surprised because all of a sudden a dog jumped on him, and he shouted, and Mrs. Edviges, she was like, "What's going on, Divaldo? What are you doing?" And then he explained that a dog had just jumped on him. But nobody could see the dog, just Divaldo, because he's a medium. And when he was describing the dog, the type of the dog, she recognized it was her dog that had died like some months earlier. So just an example of how the animals, even after they discarnate, they can show their presence. And for her, since she loved the dog so much, it was kind of a sign that it was a testimony that he was immortal. That's not like sometimes we think, oh, it died and then it's forever. And so his body died, but not his soul. So he manifested through Divaldo. So that was interesting. But he manifested himself. And then there's another book. This one that's like spiritual phenomena in the animal world that has a lot of different stories, and one part of the stories are about premonition. So there are many stories, so some of them, like these birds and dogs, and some are really old, so this is not something new. So like in 1883, for no apparent reason, a lot of birds started to flee the small island of Krakatoa. So it's an island in Indonesia. So they started to flee the island, and nobody understood why, all of a sudden. And also the dogs, they tried to break their leashes. So they started to bark a lot. So there was this going on, and they didn't know what was going on. So after some time, I don't know, it doesn't explain exactly, after days, after some time, there was a volcanic explosion or eruption, and it destroyed like half of the island. So the birds sensed something in the air and they left, and the dogs also sensed something, but since they couldn't leave the island, they just were super excited and nervous. So this was one case. The other one, the horse, Yeri, he used to work with miners, so in this coal miner, and for 2 different times, and they explain, like in 1953 and 1955, the horse was very was making a lot of noises, and then all of a sudden it started to run out of the mine. And the miners were all impressed, like, what's going on? And they followed the horse. After they followed the horse, the mine collapsed. And that same horse, it happened 2 times. So they always kept the horse close to them in the mines after that. And also there are some testimonies about cats in London that before a German bombed London in 1940, there were, like in one example they had, there was this Mrs. Woodhouse. She had a cat, and the cat had babies, like 4 kitties. And all of a sudden the cat started to take each kitten and take to her. And then she started, what's going on, what's happening? And after she did that, the cat went and stayed at the door, just waiting for Mrs. Woodhouse. So because the cat behaved like that, she decided to leave the house. She thought it was a sign, okay, and left the house. And at the time they had shelters for bombing. And they say that after she left, after some time, her apartment or the area she lived was bombed. So she was saved by her cat somehow. So, and there are many other stories. Even like in Greece, before Christ, there are stories of birds and geese that also left the area before there was an earthquake. So animals, sometimes are very intelligent. And we should pay attention to the signs. Right? Okay, so let's talk about suffering and evolution. So why do animals suffer? So in this book, The Mystery of the Being Before Pain and Death, so Herculano Pires, he says, the animals suffer because they evolve. We suffer because we evolve. So consciously or unconsciously, evolution is always accompanied by labor pain that heralds evolutionary transitions to superior realms. So it is consequence of efforts by things and beings, struggling with internal and external obstacles that face everyone in the footsteps of universal evolution. So basically, it is part of our evolution, it's part of the animal's evolution to suffer. And by suffering, we acquire more resources, we learn, we know how to not to do things, we know how to do things. Whenever we make a mistake, we know how to correct. So each animal has its own learning path, like we do. And at the end of one experience, or one life, it must die and reincarnate. And these situations of suffering are part of their learning path. And also of their tutors, of us. If you have a pet and the pet is going through some situation, we also learn from that situation. It's not just the animals. And continue. So this is from a manual. Suffering is an absolute ingredient for the cause of progress. All beings created simple and ignorant are required to fight for the conquest of reason. So this is the good news. Once elevated spirits, one no longer gets to know pain. Considering that love will be the sun in one's heart, scattering all of life's shadows through the touch of his own light. So we suffer while we're learning, but at some point, when we get more evolved, we stop suffering. Even if we think about planet Earth going through this transformation, we're now in the trial and expiation space, but we're moving towards the regeneration. So it will be a better place. We're not going to suffer as much. So the more we evolve and learn, the less we suffer. So it's just a step on the way. Basically, it's not going to be forever. Since they are also evolving, thank God, they're not going to be suffering forever, right? And we also. Yeah, so about energies and suffering. So animals, they can absorb our negative energies and become ill. Um, and when the animal is suffering, we also suffer. And we want to do something to help. We want to appeal to passes, prayers, fluidic water to help them. So there is a question, is this a valid? Should we do this? Should we try to make it better? They say yes, everything is valid when we're trying to make good, to do good. But they say be careful about passes and fluidic water, because there needs to be an appropriate modification to the energy. Our human energy is very dense, it's very concentrated. They explain like it's the same energy between animal and human, but ours is much more concentrated because because of our reason. We generate more energy. The quantity is bigger than what is in the animal. So that's the basic difference between the energies. And that's why we shouldn't do passes on animals. But they say that there are some people that know how to change the energy and so there are some specific places that they know how to do this. But if we don't know, we shouldn't, give passes to animals. So it's just like a warning. But we should do everything else that is that we can do. Right? And they say the safest way is to help the animal spiritually is to pray. Pray. You can pray for people. You can pray for animals. You can pray for your plants. Pray always help. And they explain that prayer is not a direct energy. We're not like sending direct energy. You send the prayer to the spiritual world, and the spiritual world knows how to use your energy, because whenever we pray, we're sending energy. We're sending our thoughts, our love, our wantings. So the spiritual world, they use this energy and they distribute the best way. So it's better just send pray, and the energy will be better utilized. Another topic, reincarnation. So we talked a little bit in the beginning, but here there's some more information. So after discarnating, the animal still preserves its individuality, although it's not as self-conscious as we are. Some books say they are a little self-conscious in some situations, some say they're not, but for sure, not like us, that's for sure. They usually stay in the spiritual world for a very, very short period of time. They have no free will, so they cannot choose. And they just act on instinct, so they cannot choose the species to reincarnate. And in one of the books, they talk about reincarnation chambers. So there is a reincarnation department in Natsulat, for whoever read the book. There's also reincarnation chambers for animals, where they are taken care of. And they go through the same process, or a similar process of the human spirits, which is the miniaturization process. So where the perispirit, so when we die, our perispirit, which is just the envelope of our body, or our spirit, on the other side, we have to go through a miniaturization process, so we can reincarnate on Earth, and the animals go through the same process. But it's much faster in animals than in humans. And the duration of the process is based on the species. And then in the book they say it can take seconds for insects. So for the smaller, I thought it was interesting, for smaller animals, it can take seconds. And then hours for other smaller animals, days for dogs, so a few days it can take for dogs, a few months for larger animals like elephants and whales. And reincarnation is compulsory for animals, so they don't get to choose. And the process is done and assisted by spiritual workers in colonies, like we were saying, the colonies. And in this book, they mention two colonies. There's the Dionisi colony and then the Joyful Ranch, Joyful Ranch colony, where they take care of the animals. And there is discarnate people who take care of animals, and also incarnated people who, when we sleep, some of us might be helping somewhere in a colony. In the book, they say the example of a veterinarian, a vet. He treated animals here on Earth, and when he was sleeping, he was learning, and he started to treat animals on the spiritual world as well. Euthanasia. So euthanasia. So like we discuss euthanasia for people, we should always also discuss how about euthanasia for animals. So what do the spirits think about it? Should we do? Should we not do? So they say it should be used as a last resource when there is no other treatments available, and when the animal is suffering or it's in pain. So in that case, it's not condemned by the spirituality. So it makes sense. There's nothing else you can do, but this should be analyzed by a professional, like a vet, someone who understands what's going on with the animal, the disease, and if there's no other option. So it should always be decided or suggested by a professional. And they warn us, we should not just try to discard an animal. Maybe the animal is old, we don't want the animal anymore, maybe it's blind. Oh, let's, kill the animal. So they say, let's try to do everything we can. And the vet should suggest a procedure. And they say the euthanasia should be a procedure. We also should think that it's a procedure in favor of the patient. So in favor of the animal in this case, not anyone else. So not in our favor because we're moving from a house to an apartment, or we're just tired of taking care of the animal. So it should not be done by convenience. And continuing on this same topic, in the book, when she talks about euthanasia, she reminds us of this message by Emmanuel, which is also valid for other situations in our life. It's like a message trying to say, keep firm, keep your hope. So while you can, don't get away from home. So try your best to do whatever you have to do. While possible, endure. While you're in your reach, tolerate. It's also a message for our lives. Sometimes we just want to, go away, run away. We don't want to deal with the situation. But we have to use all our resources to try our best to endure whatever situation we're going through, to tolerate people, try to make a better situation of where we are. We should always try that. Sometimes it's not possible, but suicide. So I guess I never really thought about do animals, they commit suicide. So even though this might seem a little heavy subject, we still need to discuss if we can prevent it. Maybe we never know. So there are many cases documented in books and articles, some cases here in those books. It happens to more evolved animals due to being more individualized, more intelligent and sensitive. So more like mammals and primates and other animals. And the main reasons are emotional, because they do have emotions and feelings. So it might be for love of, if they love their owner and their owner died, their tutor died, or if they're missing someone or another animal, they get separated. of boredom, depending on where they are, how they're treated, or what's going on with them. They might be just bored. Imagine like in zoos, some places that they have a really small place. It might be because of shame, depression, sadness, melancholy. And then one of the examples they give, some of dogs, like they kill themselves, for example, if their owners died and they're being cremated. It is like years ago. So whenever their owners were cremated, they saw the fire, and they just ran towards the fire. So there was like 2 cases like this. So the animals were so sad and they felt so much that they killed themselves. There's another case where a dog drowned in a lake, also because I think it was sad. And then there was one in a zoo. There was in a cage there were monkeys and foxes, and one monkey and one fox were really friends and BFFs, and they, for some reason, they had to separate the animals. And at the moment they put like a dividing wall, one of the monkeys, he tried to drown himself in the water tank, and then the guard saw, and he was trying to prevent that from happening, but he got hit by the monkey. So at that moment, he didn't know what to do, so he just removed the wall, and they were all happy. The fox and the monkey, the little monkey, they were all happy playing. But then later on, he had to put the wall back because it was like an order from the zoo. And then so he put the wall back, and then the next day they found the little monkey dead in the water. So very sad story. And then there are more, but we don't need to know more. Okay, another topic. There are some questions about animal meat and slaughterhouses. There are some questions in the book, so they ask, but should we eat meat? Should we not eat meat? There's a lot of controversy, just so you know. But here we're going to try to put some ideas, what the book says. But at the end of the day, we have the free will when it's our decision, of course. Spiritism doesn't mandate anything, and nothing is mandatory. But we should just learn more information. So let's see what they say. So in the Spirit's book, question 723, is eating meat contrary to the natural law? Note that they don't say yes or no. They're not very specific, but they say in your physical constitution, flesh nourishes flesh. So in our material world, and just remind that this was written in 1850 something, so less 150 years ago. So the Spirit said, in your physical constitution, flesh nourishes flesh. You should, however, eat according to the demands of your body. And then we also know that many Spiritists, different speakers, they eat meat. Like Chico Xavier used to eat meat. Divaldo eats meat. But nowadays, I was doing some research and I found out some blogs, Spiritist blogs. People talking about eating meat, and some even some Spiritists are starting to try to eat less meat. So doing some studies, I saw this. But like I said, Spiritism doesn't prohibit anything. We have our free will. We should always make our choices based on information, right? In some books, they also talk about slaughterhouses. So in one of them, all animals deserve heaven. They have these classes about animals in the spiritual world, and one of them is Guilherme. He's a vet. He was a vet in Brazil. And during this class, they went to a slaughterhouse in Bauru, in São Paulo, as a spirit. So they could see more than the material side of it. And they say that they saw some like discarnate entities from the inferior zones in that area and surrounding the animals. And the entities, they absorb the animals' energies. They release when under stress. Whenever the animals are under stress, they release adrenaline and cortisol. And the inferior entities, they like that. They like that kind of energy because it's more dense, it's more primitive, and so that's what they like. So there's also another book where they call André Luiz. He talks about vampires, and they describe that in these places, spirits of low vibratory energies, they pile up to vampirize the vital fluid that escapes from sacrificed animals. And then there's in the Consoler, so there's in a few books they talk about that. And so the Consoler, question 129, he explains, even though the human's physical body requires certain vitamins, these nutritional values can be found in vegetable products without the need of slaughterhouses and meat processing plants. So that's another book. I think that's from Emmanuel, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
Right, okay. And so another question about this topic, is there any kind of self-imposed hardship that carries spiritual value? Meaning if we try hard to do something, if we make an effort, does it carry, for example, I'm going to try not to eat meat. If I make this effort, does it carry any spiritual value? So they say yes. So those in which you abstain from frivolous pleasures. When you do so, you raise yourself above matter and elevate your soul. So whenever we make an effort to be better, to not curse, to not be violent, to make good, to be better than we are, so that's a valid reason. It's a good thing. In another book, in Missionaries of Light, one of the instructors from the spiritual world also said, so our intelligence, it's so fertile in the discovery of convenience and comfort. So we are so intelligent. We will always have ways to find new substances, as well as means to encourage protein supply to the body without appealing to that industries. So we're very intelligent. So going forward, we can use our intelligence also to, change things, make things better, find alternatives. Just something we can think about. So they are encouraging us to use our intelligence, right? And then I saw some things online, like big organizations, for example, the World Health Organization, WHO, and FAO, which is the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. They have a report on human vitamin and mineral requirements, and look at what they say. So households, so this is something nowadays they're researching more. We're starting to learn, about different diets, alternative diets, that before maybe we didn't know, but we're learning. So let's see what they say. Households should select predominantly plant-based diets, rich in variety of vegetables, and then they say the evidence that such diets will prevent or delay a significant proportion of non-communicable chronic diseases is consistent. Basically, they're recommending that we eat more plant-based diets, and they say even if you eat meat, you just should reduce. We should reduce meat and just eat more like whole plants, not processed. They also say don't eat processed food. So just a few things, and also Kaiser Permanente is a big health insurance. I don't know if you've heard of it in California, and they are also now endorsing and encouraging plant-based diets. And so there are many studies, and they have even like a booklet telling you, tips and things like that. Okay, so zootherapy. So here, they say that this started when it was kind of by chance. Actually, nothing by chance, but they had some kids, and they put the kids with animals, and they started kids with, I don't know if they were autistic kids. So when they started to interact with animals, they saw the kids change their behavior. They were more happy, they were communicating more. Some autistic kids, they don't communicate a lot. So they started to see some changes in the behavior. So they started to research. That's how zootherapy came about. So it's a set of procedures using animals to help patients to improve their clinical status. And they mentioned here, like for the autistic people or kids, it's like they waked up, they were awakened from their constant state of shutdown when they were interacting. I think in this case was with horses. And also, even for adults, so the simple contact with a dog or a cat, or just petting them, is a holy remedy to lower blood pressure. Also in nursing homes, the presence of an animal increases life expectation. So again, whenever we interact with animals, they help us and we help them. Or we learn from them and they learn from us. And I also think here they mentioned in Brazil there was an experiment. They did equine therapy, yeah, horseback riding. So they had a lot of kids with Down syndrome, and they had by treatment. They noticed that the psychomotor development, they developed more like their movements while they were doing zootherapy with the horses. That was done in 1980s. But they also noticed that, so they didn't have many horses and they had a lot of kids. So they would come, get treated. Whenever they were like 80% okay, now they had to, leave the treatment and another kid would come. But they noticed also all the kids, they didn't want to leave, they didn't want to quit the treatment. So that also generated some sadness in the kids. Our responsibility. So in the books, they also talk about what is our responsibility concerning animals. So we talk about we being tutors of them, and we should, even like in zootherapy, so we should allow animals using zootherapy a good quality of life. So they are helping us, but we should also help them. They must be trained with patience and respect, handled with care, and above all, loved. We should always prevent any kind of animal abuse. And they say the relationship of friendship and trust that will develop between parties will certainly contribute to the evolution of both spirits, the human and the animal. I didn't even know this book, but there is a book called Spiritist Conduct. And for many different situations in life, they tell us what should be our conduct as spiritists. So I thought it was awesome. But they have like about animals, about children, with women, with many different scenarios. And regarding the animals, they say, abstain from harassing and imprisoning, abusing, or killing domestic or wild animals, birds and fish, for recreational purposes, and also for sportive tournaments. There are amusements that are true crimes in disguise. So we should try to not do those kinds of things. Like if we think trophy hunting, right? So it's like a sportive tournament, it's an example. We hear nowadays a lot of people killing like endangered species in Africa. So let's just think about what the spirits are telling us. Also, regarding domestic animals, they learn according to the way we treat them. So if we treat them with respect, they will learn about respect. If we treat them with disdain, That's what they will learn. If they suffer an aggression or many aggressions, they will learn to attack and become violent. So we may consider ourselves as older and more experienced brothers of the animals. So think of our younger brothers. We have a lot of responsibility in our hands as their tutors in this life. That's it. Thank you.